In a quiet village nestled between green hills and a sparkling river, life was simple and peaceful. The villagers believed that twins brought special blessings, and they cherished their royal twins, two bright children with smiles that could light up the darkest night. Everyone loved them, and the twins were the pride of the village. One sunny morning, however, something terrible happened. The twins disappeared. At first, the villagers thought they were playing hide and seek, as they often did. But as the sun climbed higher and the day grew long, the twins were nowhere to be found. Panic began to spread. The king and queen were heartbroken, and the villagers searched every corner of the village and beyond. They searched the forests, the riverside, and even asked travelers if they had seen the twins. But the twins had vanished without a trace. The village grew quiet with sadness, and fear settled in their hearts. Without the twins, strange things began to happen. The animals in the forest no longer sang their songs. The river stopped its gentle bubbling, and a heavy cloud seemed to hang over everyone's heads. The villagers knew something was very wrong. One night, as the villagers gathered to talk about what to do, Kofi, a boy from the village, stood up. He was shy and quiet, and many didn't know much about him. But Kofi had a secret. He had been having strange dreams ever since the twins disappeared. In his dreams, he saw them, trapped in a dark place, calling out for help. Kofi didn't understand what the dreams meant, but he knew they were important. The villagers didn't believe Kofi at first. They were too scared and confused to trust the dreams of a quiet boy. But Kofi couldn't shake the feeling that he was the only one who could help. He decided to go on a journey to find the twins, even if no one believed him. Early one morning, while the village still slept, Kofi packed his small bag, said goodbye to his family, and set off into the unknown. Kofi had no idea where to start. His dreams had shown him glimpses of the forest, the river, and a place filled with shadows, but nothing made sense to him. He walked through the forest, listening to the silence that had replaced the usual songs of birds and animals. It was as if the whole forest was holding its breath. After hours of walking, Kofi sat down by the river, feeling a little lost. As he stared into the water, he noticed something strange. The river, which had been quiet for days, suddenly bubbled and gurgled. Kofi leaned closer, and in the reflection of the water, he saw a flicker of light. It wasn't the sun, but something deep in the river, calling to him. Kofi didn't know what to do, but his heart told him to follow the light. The next morning, Kofi woke up feeling stronger and more determined. He followed the river upstream, keeping his eyes on the flickering light beneath the surface. The path became more difficult, with rocks and thick bushes blocking his way. But Kofi kept going. He knew that the light was important, and somehow it was connected to the twins. As Kofi continued his journey, the forest around him grew darker. The trees seemed taller, their branches forming a thick canopy overhead that blocked out the sunlight. Kofi began to feel uneasy. The forest had always been a place of safety, but now it felt strange and cold. He could feel something watching him, something that didn't want him to continue. But Kofi was brave, and he pressed on. He knew the twins needed him, and he couldn't turn back now. As he walked deeper into the forest, he began to hear whispers. Soft, strange voices floated on the wind, calling his name. Kofi stopped, his heart pounding. He wasn't alone. The whispers grew louder, and Kofi felt a chill run down his spine. He looked around but saw nothing. The trees seemed to shift and move in the corner of his eye, but when he looked directly at them, they stood still. Kofi swallowed his fear and kept walking. He had to stay focused. Suddenly, Kofi heard a rustling behind him. He spun around, his heart racing. Standing in the shadows was a figure, tall and dark, with glowing eyes that stared at him. Kofi froze, unsure of what to do. The figure didn't move, but its eyes followed him, watching his every step. Kofi took a deep breath and summoned all his courage. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice steady despite the fear in his heart. The figure remained silent for a moment, then stepped forward, revealing itself. It was a creature made of shadows, with long, twisting limbs and a face that seemed to change shape with every breath. "You are looking for the twins," the shadowy figure said, its voice like the wind through the trees. Kofi nodded, too afraid to speak. The figure tilted its head, studying him. "I know where they are," it continued, "but you will not like what you find." Kofi's heart sank. The figure's words filled him with dread, but he had come too far to turn back now. "Tell me," Kofi said, his voice firm. The shadowy figure smiled, a twisted grin that made Kofi's skin crawl. "They are not in this world anymore," it said softly. Kofi's heart pounded as the shadowy figure's words hung in the air. "Not in this world anymore?" he repeated, trying to understand what that meant. The figure nodded, its glowing eyes flickering like the light Kofi had seen in the river. "They were taken to a place beyond your understanding," the figure whispered. "A world where shadows rule and the light fades. If you want to save them, you must follow me." Kofi felt his fear deepen, but the thought of the missing twins gave him strength. "I'll go wherever I have to," he replied firmly. The shadow figure smiled again, and with a wave of its long, dark arm, the forest around Kofi seemed to dissolve. The trees faded into a swirling mist, and the ground beneath his feet shifted. Kofi felt like he was floating, moving through space and time, but he wasn't sure where he was going. The next moment, Kofi found himself standing on solid ground again, but this place was nothing like the forest he had left. The sky above him was a deep, inky black, with no stars or moon to light the way. All around him were tall, twisted structures that looked like they had been carved from shadows themselves. The air was cold, and a deep silence hung over everything. Kofi looked around, searching for the shadowy figure, but it had vanished. He was alone. His heart raced, but he knew he couldn't let fear take over. He had to find the twins. He started walking, his footsteps echoing in the eerie silence. As Kofi ventured deeper into this strange world, he began to see strange creatures lurking in the shadows. They had glowing eyes, like the figure he had met before, and they watched him as he passed. They didn't attack or speak, but their presence made Kofi uneasy. He could feel their eyes on him, following his every move. Suddenly, Kofi heard something. It was faint, but unmistakable, a cry. It was the voice of a child, echoing through the shadowy world. Kofi's heart leaped. It had to be the twins. He ran toward the sound, his feet pounding against the cold ground. As Kofi followed the cries, he came to a large, dark building. Its doors were massive and heavy, and strange markings were carved into them. Kofi hesitated for a moment, unsure if he should enter, but the sound of the twins' voices urged him forward. He pushed the doors open and stepped inside. The inside of the building was even darker than the outside, and Kofi could barely see in front of him. But he could hear the twins' voices more clearly now. "Help us!" they cried, their voices filled with fear. Kofi moved through the darkness, his hands outstretched, feeling his way forward. Finally, Kofi reached a small room at the far end of the building. Inside, he saw the twins, huddled together in a corner. Their faces were pale, and their eyes were wide with fear. Kofi rushed to their side, pulling them into a tight embrace. "We thought you'd never find us," one of the twins whispered, tears streaming down her face. "We were so scared." "I'm here now," Kofi said, trying to sound braver than he felt. "I'm going to get you out of here." But as soon as Kofi spoke, the doors to the room slammed shut, and the darkness around them deepened. A low, rumbling voice filled the air. "You cannot take them," the voice boomed. "They belong to the shadows now." Kofi's heart raced as he realized they were not alone. The shadowy figure had returned, but now it was much larger, towering over them like a giant. Its eyes burned with anger, and its dark form filled the room. "You must leave them behind," the figure growled, "or stay and join them in the shadows forever." Kofi stood up, shielding the twins behind him. "I won't leave them," he said, his voice shaking but determined. "I came to save them, and I'm not leaving without them." The shadow figure let out a deep, rumbling laugh. "You are brave, boy," it said, "but bravery will not save you here. This is my world, and no one leaves without my permission." Kofi felt a wave of hopelessness wash over him, but he refused to give up. He thought back to the dreams he had, to the light he had followed in the river. Maybe there was still a way out. He took a deep breath and looked the shadow figure in the eyes. "I followed the light," Kofi said, his voice steady, "and that light will lead us out of here." The shadow figure paused, its eyes narrowing. "The light?" it hissed. "The light does not belong here." Without warning, the figure lunged at Kofi, its dark form swirling around him like a storm. Kofi felt the cold shadows wrap around him, squeezing him tight. But just as the darkness closed in, Kofi remembered the light he had seen in the river. He closed his eyes and focused on that light, letting it fill his mind. Suddenly, a warm glow surrounded Kofi, pushing the shadows away. The light grew brighter and brighter, filling the room with a golden glow. The shadow figure shrieked and recoiled, its dark form shrinking in the presence of the light. Kofi opened his eyes and saw the light shining from within him. He didn't understand where it had come from, but he knew it was the key to their escape. He turned to the twins and reached out his hands. "Hold on to me," he said. The twins grabbed Kofi's hands, and together they walked toward the light. The shadows tried to pull them back, but the light was too strong. Step by step, they made their way out of the dark room, out of the building, and back into the strange world of shadows. The creatures that had watched Kofi before now scattered, unable to withstand the light. Kofi led the twins through the shadowy world, following the glow that guided them. The path was long and difficult, but Kofi never let go of the twins' hands. Finally, they reached the edge of the shadow world. Before them was a shimmering portal, glowing with the same light Kofi had seen in the river. Kofi took a deep breath and stepped through the portal, pulling the twins with him. The next moment, they were back in the forest, standing by the river. The sun was shining, and the sounds of birds and animals filled the air once more. Kofi smiled, feeling the warmth of the sun on his face. They had made it. The twins were safe. The villagers were overjoyed when Kofi returned with the twins. The king and queen wept with gratitude, and the village celebrated for days. Kofi became a hero, not just for saving the twins, but for bringing light back to the village. But even as the celebrations continued, Kofi couldn't shake the feeling that the shadow world was still out there, waiting. The shadowy figure's words echoed in his mind. They belong to the shadows now. Kofi knew the battle wasn't over yet. One night, as Kofi lay in bed, a soft voice whispered through the darkness. It was faint, but unmistakable. The shadows were calling again. Kofi sat up in bed, his heart pounding as the whispering grew louder. The familiar chill of fear crept over him. He had saved the twins and returned them to the village, but something told him the shadows hadn't given up. The memory of the shadow figure's glowing eyes and its menacing words haunted him. He glanced out of the small window in his room. The moonlight illuminated the village, peaceful and quiet, but the silence seemed different tonight. heavier, almost expectant. Kofi knew that the shadow world wasn't finished with him. It wanted something more. Unable to sleep, Kofi quietly got dressed and stepped outside. The air was cool, and the village was still. He walked toward the river, where he had first seen the flickering light that led him to the shadow world. The water was calm, reflecting the moon above, but Kofi couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching him. As he stood by the riverbank, the whispering returned. It wasn't loud, but it was persistent, like a soft wind brushing against his ears. He closed his eyes, listening. The words were unclear, but they carried the same eerie tone he had heard in the shadow world. The message was simple but chilling. We are coming. Suddenly, the river bubbled, and a dark shape rose from the water. Kofi's breath caught in his throat as he watched the shadowy figure emerge. It was smaller than the creature he had faced before, but its presence sent a shiver down his spine. The figure didn't speak. It simply stood there, watching him with glowing eyes. Kofi knew what this meant. The shadow world wasn't just a place he had visited. It was connected to him now, and it wasn't going to let him go easily. The light he had used to escape had disturbed the balance between the two worlds, and the shadows wanted revenge. Kofi took a step back, unsure of what to do. His first instinct was to run, but he knew he couldn't run forever. The shadows would follow him, just as they had followed him before. He had to face them again, but this time, he had to do more than escape. He had to stop them. The figure in the water disappeared, sinking back into the depths of the river. Kofi watched, his mind racing. He needed help. The shadows were too powerful for him to fight alone. But who could help him? No one in the village knew about the shadow world, and even if they did, what could they do against creatures made of darkness? As Kofi walked back toward the village, an idea began to form in his mind. The light. It had saved him before, and he had seen how it weakened the shadows. But where had it come from? He didn't fully understand the power he had used, but he knew it was the key to defeating the shadows once and for all. The next day, Kofi sought out the village elders. He needed to learn more about the light and the shadows. The elders had lived for many years, and they knew the ancient stories passed down through generations. Perhaps they knew something that could help him. Kofi sat with the elders, telling them everything: the twins' disappearance, the shadow world, and the strange light that had guided him. The elders listened carefully, their faces grave. When Kofi finished, there was a long silence. Finally, the eldest among them spoke. "There is a story," he said slowly, "of a time long ago when the shadows and the light were at war. The shadows sought to consume the world, to plunge everything into darkness. But the light fought back, and for many years, the two forces were locked in battle." Kofi leaned forward, eager to hear more. "The light was not just a force of nature," the elder continued. "It was alive. It chose certain individuals, those with pure hearts and brave spirits, to wield its power. These individuals became protectors of the world, fighting against the darkness. But over time, the shadow world was sealed away, and the light's protectors disappeared. The balance was restored, and the two worlds remained separate." Kofi's heart raced. "So the light chose me?" he asked. The elder nodded. "It seems so. But you must be careful, Kofi. The shadows have found a way to break through the barrier between our world and theirs. If they are not stopped, they will consume everything." Kofi felt the weight of the elder's words. He had been chosen to protect the village, perhaps even the whole world, from the shadows. It was a responsibility he hadn't asked for, but it was one he couldn't ignore. "But how do I stop them?" Kofi asked. "I don't even know how to use the light." The elder looked thoughtful for a moment before answering. "The light is within you, Kofi. It responds to your heart, your courage, and your desire to protect those you love. You must trust it. The more you understand yourself, the more the light will grow. But be warned, The shadows will try to cloud your heart with fear and doubt. You must not let them win. Kofi nodded, though fear still gnawed at him. The task ahead seemed impossible, but he knew the elder was right. He couldn't let fear take over. He had to face the shadows, not just for himself, but for the village and the twins. That night, as Kofi lay in bed, the whispers returned. But this time, instead of fear, Kofi felt a calm determination settle over him. The shadows were coming, but he was ready. The light inside him began to glow, soft at first, then brighter. Kofi smiled as the warmth filled him, pushing the shadows back. The battle was far from over, but Kofi knew one thing for sure. He wasn't fighting alone. The light had chosen him, and with it, he would protect his world from the darkness. The next morning, Kofi gathered his courage and set out for the forest once again. This time, he wasn't just a boy searching for answers. He was a protector, and the light would guide him. As he walked, the whispers grew louder, and the shadows began to stir. But Kofi wasn't afraid. The light was with him, and he was ready. As Kofi ventured deeper into the forest, the shadows began to move with greater intensity. He could feel them gathering, swirling around him like dark clouds on the edge of a storm. But this time, he stood tall, his heart steady, the warmth of the light within him acting as a shield against the creeping fear. The trees, once familiar, now seemed twisted and distorted, their branches reaching out like gnarled hands. The deeper Kofi went, the more the forest transformed into something darker, something closer to the shadow world he had escaped. The path he walked seemed to stretch endlessly, but Kofi kept moving, guided by the faint glow of the light within him. Suddenly, the air grew cold, and a deep, rumbling voice echoed through the forest. "You dare return?" the voice boomed, shaking the ground beneath Kofi's feet. He recognized it immediately. It was the voice of the shadow figure, the one that had tried to claim the twins. But this time, it felt different, more powerful, more dangerous. Kofi stopped, his eyes scanning the darkness ahead. The trees parted, revealing a clearing, and there, standing at its center, was the shadow figure. But it was no longer the towering, swirling shape Kofi had seen before. This time, it was larger, more defined, with a body made of pure darkness and eyes that glowed like burning embers. "I told you," the figure hissed, its voice sending chills down Kofi's spine. "They belong to the shadows. And so do you." Kofi took a deep breath, steadying himself. "I'm not afraid of you," he said, his voice firm. "The light is stronger than your darkness." The shadow figure let out a low, menacing laugh. "Foolish boy. The light may have saved you once, but it will not protect you here. This is my world now." Kofi clenched his fists, feeling the warmth of the light pulse through him. "I don't belong to the shadows," he said, his voice filled with determination. "And neither do the twins." The figure's eyes flared with anger, and it raised its arms, summoning the shadows around it. The darkness swirled, forming into monstrous shapes, creatures with sharp teeth and glowing eyes, their forms shifting and twisting in the air. Kofi's heart raced, but he held his ground. He could feel the fear trying to creep in, but he pushed it away, focusing on the light. The creatures lunged toward him, their jaws snapping, but as they neared, the light within Kofi flared, creating a barrier of warmth and protection. The creatures shrieked and recoiled, unable to breach the glow. The shadow figure growled in frustration. "You think your light can save you?" it snarled. "It is weak, just like you." Kofi took a step forward, his confidence growing. "The light isn't weak," he said. "It's stronger than you'll ever be, because it's filled with hope, with love. And those things are stronger than your darkness." The figure's eyes narrowed, and it lashed out with a tendril of shadow, trying to snuff out the light. But Kofi raised his hand, and the light inside him burst forth, meeting the darkness head-on. The two forces collided, and for a moment, it seemed like the shadows would win. But then Kofi remembered the twins, the village, and the people he was fighting for. He thought of the love that filled his heart, the determination to protect them, and the light surged. With a blinding flash, the shadows were pushed back, and the dark creatures dissolved into mist. The shadow figure let out a furious roar, its form flickering and weakening. "No!" it screamed, its voice filled with rage and disbelief. "This cannot be." Kofi took another step forward, his eyes locked on the shadow figure. "It's over," he said. "You don't control me. You don't control the twins. We belong to the light, and you can't take that away." The figure writhed, its form shrinking as the light overwhelmed it. "You may have won today," it hissed, its voice growing faint. "But the shadows never truly disappear. They are always waiting, lurking." With one final scream, the shadow figure dissolved into the air, leaving nothing but silence in its wake. Kofi stood there for a moment, breathing heavily as the adrenaline slowly faded. The forest around him seemed to return to normal, the twisted trees straightening, the air warming. He had won, but he knew the battle was not truly over. The shadows, as the figure had said, were always there, waiting for a moment of weakness. But Kofi was no longer afraid. He had faced the darkness and found the strength within himself to fight it. The light had chosen him, and as long as he carried it within him, he knew he could face whatever came next. Kofi turned and made his way back to the village, the warmth of the light still glowing inside him. The journey had been long, and the battle difficult, but he had emerged victorious. The twins were safe, and the village was at peace. As Kofi walked through the village gates, he smiled to himself. He had learned something important, that the light wasn't just a force to be wielded. It was a part of him, a part of everyone who carried hope in their hearts. And as long as that light remained, the shadows could never truly win. The villagers greeted Kofi with joy and relief, and the twins ran to him, their faces beaming with gratitude. Kofi embraced them, feeling the weight of his journey finally lift from his shoulders. The celebration that followed was filled with laughter, music, and dancing, but in the back of Kofi's mind, he knew this was only the beginning. The shadow world was still out there, and one day it would try to break through again. But when that day came, Kofi would be ready. As the village celebration continued late into the night, Kofi sat quietly by the fire, lost in thought. He watched the flames dance and flicker, casting long shadows on the ground. The warmth of the fire reminded him of the light within, but the shadows it cast reminded him that the darkness was never far away. The twins, now safe and carefree, laughed and played nearby, their ordeal already seeming like a distant memory. Kofi smiled, happy to see them so full of life. But deep inside, he couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows hadn't given up. The shadow figure's final words echoed in his mind. The shadows never truly disappear. They are always waiting, lurking. The village elders had been right. Kofi had been chosen by the light to protect not just the twins, but the village and everyone in it. He had won the battle, but he knew the war was far from over. The shadows would return, and when they did, they would be more dangerous than ever. The next few weeks passed in peace, but Kofi remained on edge. Every shadow that flickered in the corner of his eye made his heart race. Every whisper of the wind reminded him of the eerie voices from the shadow world. He tried to push the thoughts away, to enjoy the quiet moments, but the weight of his responsibility was always there. One evening, as Kofi sat by the river, watching the sun set over the horizon, a strange feeling washed over him. The air grew still, and the vibrant colors of the sky seemed to fade, replaced by a dull gray. The water, once calm, rippled unnaturally. Kofi stood up, his senses alert. Something was wrong. The shadows had returned. Without warning, the surface of the river began to swirl, forming a vortex. Kofi took a step back, his heart pounding. From the center of the vortex, a dark shape began to rise. It was smaller than the shadow figure he had faced before, but it carried the same menacing presence. Kofi's first instinct was to run, but he knew he couldn't. Not this time. He had to confront the shadows head-on. The light within him stirred, ready to protect him, but Kofi hesitated. Something about this new shadow felt different. More deliberate, more controlled. The figure emerged fully from the water, standing on the surface as if it were solid ground. It was humanoid in shape, with eyes that glowed a faint blue instead of the burning red he had seen before. It stood silently, watching him with an unnerving stillness. Kofi took a deep breath, summoning the light inside him. "Who are you?" he called out, his voice steady. The figure tilted its head slightly, its expression unreadable. When it spoke, its voice was soft, almost melodic, but there was an undercurrent of something darker. "I am not your enemy, Kofi." Kofi narrowed his eyes, unsure whether to believe it. "You're from the shadow world. How can I trust you?" The figure took a step forward, the water beneath it rippling gently. "The shadows are not all the same. Some of us seek balance, not destruction. I have come to warn you." Kofi tensed, the light within him flaring slightly. "Warn me about what?" The figure paused, as if choosing its words carefully. "The shadow world is in chaos. The figure you defeated was one of many, but there are others, stronger, more dangerous. They know about you, and they are coming. The balance between the light and the shadows is fragile, and they wish to tip it in their favor." Kofi felt a chill run down his spine. He had suspected the shadows would return, but this was worse than he had imagined. "What do they want?" "They want to claim this world," the figure said, its voice calm but grave. "They believe that the light has grown too powerful, that it is time for the shadows to rise. You, Kofi, are the key. The light has chosen you, but it has also made you a target." Kofi clenched his fists, his mind racing. He had been chosen to protect the village, but now it seemed the danger was far greater than just his home. "What can I do?" he asked, his voice filled with urgency. The figure's blue eyes flickered for a moment before it spoke again. "The light within you is strong, but it is not enough on its own. You must seek out others like you, others who carry the light. Together, you will be able to stand against the shadows." Kofi's heart sank. He had always thought he was alone in this fight, but now he realized there were others out there, facing the same dangers. "Where do I find them?" The figure raised a hand, pointing toward the distant mountains. "Beyond the village, past the river and the forests, there is a place where the light is strongest. You will find them there. But be warned, the journey will not be easy. The shadows know of your quest, and they will do everything in their power to stop you." Kofi nodded, determination settling over him. He had faced the shadows before, and he would face them again. But this time, he wouldn't be alone. "Thank you," he said, his voice filled with resolve. The figure nodded, its form beginning to fade into the shadows. "Remember, Kofi," it said as it disappeared, "the light is not just a weapon. It is a guide. Trust it, and it will lead you to victory." As the figure vanished, Kofi stood by the river, the weight of his new mission settling heavily on his shoulders. The shadows were coming, and he couldn't face them alone. He had to find the others, those who carried the light, and together they would stop the darkness from consuming the world. The journey ahead was daunting, but Kofi felt a sense of hope growing within him. The light had chosen him for a reason, and with it, he would protect not just his village, but the entire world from the shadows. And so, with the first light of dawn, Kofi set out on his new quest, ready to face whatever dangers lay ahead. Kofi began his journey with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. The sun had just risen, casting a warm glow over the land as he left the village behind. He felt the weight of his responsibility, but the light within him gave him strength. As he walked, he remembered the figure's words. The light is not just a weapon. It is a guide. The path was unfamiliar, but the light seemed to pull him in the right direction. The forests he passed through were quiet, the trees swaying gently in the breeze. Though peaceful, Kofi couldn't shake the feeling that the shadows were watching him, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. After hours of walking, Kofi reached a dense forest where the trees stood tall and close together, blocking much of the sunlight. The deeper he ventured, the darker it became. He could feel the shadows pressing in, testing his resolve. He reminded himself of the light, letting it guide his steps. Suddenly, a low growl broke the silence. Kofi stopped, his heart racing as he looked around. Out of the darkness, a pair of glowing red eyes appeared, followed by another, and then another. Shadow creatures emerged from the trees, their forms twisted and menacing. Kofi's instinct was to run, but he stood his ground, calling on the light within him. The creatures circled him, their growls growing louder. One lunged at him, but Kofi raised his hand, and a burst of light shot out, striking the creature and sending it recoiling into the shadows. The other creatures snarled and hesitated, as if unsure whether to attack. Kofi's confidence grew. The light was strong, stronger than the shadows. But he couldn't stay and fight every creature that came his way. He had to continue his journey. He focused on the light, letting it flare brighter. The creatures hissed and backed away, retreating into the darkness. The path cleared before him, and Kofi pressed on. After what felt like hours, Kofi emerged from the forest and found himself at the base of a towering mountain range. The mountains loomed before him, jagged and foreboding, but he knew he had to cross them to reach the place where the light was strongest. As he climbed, the air grew colder, and the wind howled around him. The mountain path was steep and treacherous, but Kofi kept moving, determined to find the others who carried the light. He could feel the shadows lurking in the cracks and crevices of the rocks, waiting for him to falter. Halfway up the mountain, Kofi spotted a cave in the rock face. The entrance was dark, and something about it sent a shiver down his spine. But he felt the light inside him stir, urging him forward. This was no ordinary cave. It held something important. With cautious steps, Kofi entered the cave, the light within him casting a faint glow. The air inside was cold and still, and the walls were lined with strange markings. As he ventured deeper, he began to hear whispers, soft, indistinct voices that seemed to come from all directions. At the heart of the cave, Kofi found something unexpected, a large stone altar, glowing faintly with a pale blue light. Atop the altar lay a small, glowing object, a shard of crystal. It pulsed with energy, and Kofi could feel the light within it calling to him. He approached the altar, drawn to the crystal. As he reached out to touch it, a voice echoed through the cave. "You are not yet ready." Kofi froze, his hand hovering over the crystal. The voice was calm but firm, and it seemed to come from everywhere at once. He looked around but saw no one. "Who are you?" Kofi asked, his voice trembling slightly. The voice responded, "I am the guardian of the light. This shard holds great power, but only those who are truly prepared may claim it. Your journey is not yet complete." Kofi withdrew his hand, understanding that the crystal was something he would need later in his quest. But he had to prove himself first. The voice continued, "You must find the others, those who carry the light. Together, you will face the true darkness. Only then will you be ready to wield the power of the shard." Kofi nodded, accepting the challenge. He left the cave, more determined than ever to complete his mission. The mountains ahead seemed even more daunting now, but Kofi knew that he couldn't turn back. As he resumed his climb, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The shadows were growing stronger, but so was he. And with each step, the light within him burned brighter. For the first time since the start of his journey, Kofi felt that he wasn't alone. Somewhere out there, others like him were fighting the same battle, and soon they would stand together against the darkness. The path ahead was long, but Kofi was ready. The light had chosen him for a reason, and he would not fail. Kofi pressed onward, climbing higher up the mountain, his mind racing with thoughts of the others who carried the light. He wondered who they were, where they might be, and whether they were as afraid as he was. But the light within him never wavered, and it gave him the strength to keep going. As the day wore on, Kofi reached the peak of the mountain, exhausted but triumphant. The view from the top was breathtaking. Vast green valleys stretched out before him, and in the distance he could see the faint outlines of more mountains. But something else caught his attention. A small village nestled in the valley below, with smoke rising from the chimneys of its homes. Kofi's heart lifted. Could this be the place where the others were waiting? The figure had said that he would find them where the light was strongest, and something about the village seemed right. He hurried down the mountain, eager to find out. By the time Kofi reached the village, the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows over the houses. The village seemed quiet, almost too quiet. As he walked through the streets, Kofi noticed that there were no children playing, no sounds of life. The village felt abandoned. Suddenly, a soft voice called out from behind him. "Are you looking for something?" Kofi spun around to see a girl standing in the doorway of a small house. She couldn't have been much older than him, but there was something about her that seemed wise beyond her years. Her eyes glowed faintly, a soft light that was almost unnoticeable. Kofi's heart skipped a beat. Could she be one of the others? "I'm looking for those who carry the light," Kofi said, his voice filled with hope. "I was told I would find them here." The girl studied him for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then, she nodded slowly. "You've come to the right place," she said. "But it's not just me. There are others. Come with me." Kofi followed the girl through the village, his heart pounding in his chest. She led him to a small clearing behind the houses, where a group of people stood in a circle around a fire. They all had the same faint glow in their eyes, the light. The moment Kofi stepped into the clearing, the group turned to look at him. A man, who seemed to be the leader, stepped forward. "You've come," he said, his voice deep and calm. "We've been waiting for you." Kofi felt a surge of relief and excitement. "I'm Kofi," he said. "I was sent here to find you." The man smiled. "I am Amari, and we are the guardians of the light. Each of us has been chosen, just like you. The shadows are growing stronger, and we've been waiting for the one who will help us defeat them." Kofi was taken aback. "Me? But I'm just a boy. I've only just begun to understand the light." Amari placed a hand on Kofi's shoulder. "You have been chosen for a reason, Kofi. The light sees something in you that is greater than you realize. Together, we will stand against the shadows. But first, you must learn to control your power." The group welcomed Kofi warmly, and over the next few days, they taught him more about the light than he had ever known. He learned how to focus its energy, how to call upon it in times of need, and how to use it to protect not just himself, but others. The training was difficult, but Kofi's determination never wavered. As the days passed, Kofi grew closer to the others. He learned that they had all faced their own battles with the shadows, and like him, they had been guided by the light to this place. Each of them had their own unique strengths, but together, they were a force to be reckoned with. One evening, as the group sat around the fire, Amari spoke of the danger that lay ahead. "The shadows are gathering their forces," he said, his voice grave. "They know we are here, and they will come for us. But we are ready. We will face them together." Kofi nodded, feeling the weight of Amari's words. He had come so far, but he knew that the hardest part of the journey was still ahead. The shadows would not rest until they had consumed everything, and it was up to him and the guardians to stop them. That night, Kofi lay awake, staring up at the stars. The weight of his responsibility pressed heavily on his mind, but he felt a deep sense of purpose. The light had chosen him, and now, with the help of the guardians, he would fulfill his destiny. As dawn broke the next morning, Kofi stood with the others at the edge of the village, ready to face whatever the shadows had in store for them. The battle was coming, and the fate of the world hung in the balance. But Kofi was no longer afraid. The light would guide him. It always had, and it always would. As dawn broke, Kofi and the Guardians stood in a line at the edge of the village, the morning light casting long shadows behind them. The air was filled with a tense anticipation, and the once quiet village now hummed with a nervous energy. Each member of the group readied themselves, checking their preparations and exchanging quiet words of encouragement. Amari, the leader, turned to face the group. His eyes, glowing with the light, met Kofi's with a reassuring look. The time has come. The shadows will not wait, and neither can we. We need to find their source and stop them before they can launch their full assault. Kofi nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over him. He knew that the shadows were not just a threat to his village, but to the entire world. As they set off, the group moved with purpose, their eyes scanning the horizon for any signs of danger. The journey took them through dense forests and over rugged terrain. The deeper they went, the more the shadows seemed to press in around them. The forest grew darker and more oppressive, and Kofi could feel the tension in the air. Every rustle of leaves and every distant call seemed to carry a sense of foreboding. Despite the growing darkness, the light within Kofi remained a beacon. It illuminated the path ahead and provided comfort to the others. Whenever the shadows seemed to grow closer, Kofi would call upon the light, creating a protective barrier that pushed them back. The Guardians followed his lead, their own powers working in harmony to fend off the encroaching darkness. After hours of travel, they arrived at the base of a towering mountain range. The mountains were even more formidable than those Kofi had crossed before. They rose sharply into the sky, their peaks hidden by ominous clouds. At the base of the mountains was a cave, dark and foreboding. Amari pointed toward it. "This is where we must go," Amari said. "The source of the shadows is within this cave. We must be careful. The shadows will not let us pass easily." Kofi and the Guardians entered the cave, the air growing colder with each step. The cave walls were rough and uneven, and the darkness seemed to press in on them from all sides. As they moved deeper, they began to hear a low, rumbling sound, like distant thunder. The ground beneath them trembled slightly, and the cave seemed to pulse with an eerie energy. They reached a large chamber, the source of the rumbling becoming louder and more intense. In the center of the chamber was a dark, swirling vortex, the shadows coalescing into a tangible form. The vortex seemed to pull at everything around it, creating a powerful and malevolent force. Kofi could feel the light within him fighting against the darkness. It was stronger than ever, but the shadows were relentless. The Guardians gathered around the vortex, each one using their powers to hold back the darkness. Kofi stepped forward, feeling the weight of their collective hope and determination. Amari spoke urgently. "We need to close the vortex. It's drawing in all the darkness from the shadow world. If we can seal it, we can stop the shadows from spreading further." Kofi nodded, focusing his energy on the vortex. He raised his hands, and a beam of light shot out, striking the swirling darkness. The vortex resisted, the shadows swirling more violently, but Kofi pushed on, channeling every ounce of light he had. The other Guardians joined in, their combined powers creating a shield of light that began to push against the vortex. The chamber filled with a blinding brilliance as the light fought to close the darkness. The rumbling grew louder, and the cave seemed to shake with the effort. Despite their best efforts, the shadows fought back fiercely. The vortex pulsed and writhed, almost as if it had a will of its own. Kofi could feel the strain on his body and mind, but he refused to give up. The light within him burned brighter, fueled by his determination and the hope of the Guardians. As the battle raged on, Kofi's focus sharpened. He remembered the words of the Guardian from the cave. "The light is not just a weapon, it is a guide." He allowed the light to guide him, to show him the way to close the vortex. With one final mighty effort, Kofi concentrated all his power into a single brilliant burst of light. The beam struck the vortex with incredible force, and for a moment, the darkness seemed to recoil. The shadows writhed and twisted, and the vortex began to shrink. The cave trembled violently, and the guardians struggled to hold their ground. Kofi's light flared brighter than ever, and with a final, powerful surge, the vortex collapsed in on itself, leaving only a faint glow of light behind. The chamber fell silent, the rumbling and shaking subsiding. The shadows had been pushed back, and the vortex was no more. The guardians, exhausted but victorious, gathered around Kofi. Amari smiled, a look of relief and pride on his face. "You did it, Kofi. You closed the vortex. The shadows are driven back, and the light is safe for now." Kofi looked around at the tired but relieved faces of the guardians. They had succeeded in their mission, but he knew that this was just one battle in a much larger war. The shadows would return, and there would be more challenges ahead. But for now, Kofi felt a profound sense of accomplishment. He had faced the darkness, and he had prevailed. The light had guided him, and with the support of the guardians, he had protected the world from the shadows. As they made their way out of the cave, the sun was rising again, casting a warm glow over the mountains. The journey had been long and difficult, but Kofi knew that he was ready for whatever lay ahead. The light within him was strong, and with it, he would continue to stand against the darkness. The world was safe for now, but Kofi's quest was far from over. The shadows would always be lurking, waiting for their chance to return. But Kofi was prepared. He would continue to protect the light and fight for the world he loved. And so, with the dawn of a new day, Kofi and the Guardians set out once more, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them. The light would guide their way, and together, they would stand strong against the darkness. As Kofi and the Guardians made their way back to the village, the early morning sun bathed the landscape in a golden light. The shadows that had once threatened the land seemed to be receding, but Kofi knew that their victory was only temporary. The darkness was cunning and persistent, and they had to remain vigilant. Upon returning to the village, the atmosphere was one of cautious celebration. The villagers had been waiting anxiously for news, and when they saw Kofi and the Guardians emerge from the forest, their relief was palpable. The village, once quiet and somber, came alive with the sounds of joy and gratitude. The Guardians were welcomed with open arms, and the villagers offered them food and rest. Kofi, though exhausted, was filled with a sense of accomplishment. He had faced the darkness and helped to protect his world. But even as he celebrated, his mind was already on the next steps. Amari gathered the Guardians and Kofi together in a small, private meeting. "We have won a significant battle, but the war is far from over," he said. "The shadows will regroup and return. We need to prepare ourselves for what is to come." Kofi listened intently. "What do we need to do next?" he asked. Amari looked thoughtful. "We need to strengthen our defenses and seek out other sources of light. There are ancient relics and hidden powers that can help us in our fight against the shadows. We must also continue to train and work together as a team." The group agreed, and preparations began. The villagers, grateful for their protection, helped the Guardians fortify their defenses and search for ancient relics. Kofi and the others trained diligently, honing their skills and learning new techniques to enhance their abilities. One evening, while exploring the forest near the village, Kofi stumbled upon a hidden path that led to an old, overgrown shrine. The shrine was covered in vines and moss, but the faint glow of light seemed to emanate from within. Kofi felt drawn to it, sensing that it held something important. He called Amari and the others to the shrine, and together, they uncovered an ancient artifact, a beautifully crafted amulet with a radiant gemstone at its center. The amulet pulsed with a warm, calming light. "This is a powerful relic," Amari said, examining the amulet. "It is said to have been created by the ancient light-bearers. It can amplify our powers and provide protection against the shadows." Kofi felt a sense of awe as he held the amulet. It was a reminder of the ancient wisdom and strength that had come before them. The Guardians decided to keep it safe and use it in their fight against the darkness. As weeks passed, the village became a hub of activity. The Guardians worked tirelessly, forging alliances with neighboring villages and sharing their knowledge about the light and shadows. Kofi, now more confident in his abilities, played a crucial role in these efforts. He continued to train and grow stronger, always ready for the next challenge. One day, a new threat emerged. Villagers reported sightings of shadow creatures near the village's borders. The creatures were different from the ones Kofi had faced before. Larger, more powerful, and more aggressive. Amari gathered the Guardians to discuss the new threat. "The shadows are evolving," he said. "They are learning from their previous encounters and becoming more dangerous. We need to be prepared for a tougher fight." Kofi felt a surge of determination. The shadows might be growing stronger, but so were they. With the ancient amulet and their combined powers, they were ready to face whatever came their way. The Guardians set out to confront the shadow creatures. The battle was fierce, with the new creatures proving to be a formidable challenge. But Kofi and the Guardians fought with all their strength, using their light to push back the darkness. During the battle, Kofi noticed a familiar pattern in the shadows' movements. They seemed to be coordinating their attacks, as if they had a leader guiding them. Realizing this, Kofi focused his efforts on locating and confronting this leader. He followed the shadows to a secluded area on the outskirts of the village. There, he found a large, imposing creature, larger than the rest and radiating an aura of malevolence. It was clear that this was the source of the shadow's newfound power. Kofi approached cautiously, his light glowing brightly. The creature hissed and lunged at him, but Kofi stood his ground. He remembered the strength of the light and the support of his friends. Summoning all his courage, he directed a powerful beam of light at the creature. The battle was intense, but Kofi's determination and the power of the amulet gave him an edge. With a final blinding surge of light, he struck the creature, causing it to dissolve into shadows. The remaining shadow creatures, now leaderless, fled into the darkness. Exhausted but victorious, Kofi returned to the village with the Guardians. The villagers celebrated their victory, but Kofi knew that this was only a temporary respite. The shadows would continue to grow and evolve, and the fight against them would be ongoing. As Kofi looked out over the village, he felt a deep sense of purpose. The light had guided him through countless challenges, and he knew that it would continue to do so. The journey was far from over, but with the strength of the Guardians and the support of the villagers, he was ready for whatever lay ahead. The world was safe for now, but the darkness was always lurking. Kofi and the Guardians would remain vigilant, always prepared to stand against the shadows and protect the light. And so, with a renewed sense of determination, Kofi and the Guardians continued their journey. The fight against the darkness was far from over, but they were ready to face whatever challenges came their way. The light would guide them, and together, they would stand strong against the ever-encroaching shadows. As the days turned into weeks, Kofi and the Guardians continued their efforts to safeguard the village and explore further. The threat of the shadows was a constant presence, but their victories had emboldened them. They became a symbol of hope and resilience for the villagers, who looked to them for protection and guidance. One crisp morning, as Kofi was training with the other Guardians, a new visitor arrived at the village. It was an old woman, her face lined with age and wisdom. She carried with her a large, intricately carved wooden staff and a small leather pouch. The villagers gathered around her, curious and intrigued. Amari, sensing the importance of the visitor, invited her to meet with him and Kofi. The old woman, introduced as Nana, greeted them with a warm smile. Her eyes sparkled with a deep, knowing light. "I have heard of your bravery," she said to Kofi and the Guardians, "and I have come to offer my assistance." Kofi and Amari listened intently as Nana explained her purpose. She was a keeper of ancient knowledge and had spent her life studying the balance between light and darkness. She carried with her an ancient book filled with lore about the shadows and their origins. Nana opened the book and showed them a series of illustrations depicting ancient battles between light and darkness. One illustration in particular caught Kofi's eye. It depicted a powerful artifact known as the Heart of Light, said to have the ability to purify even the darkest shadows. This artifact, Nana explained, is believed to be hidden in a lost temple deep within the Whispering Forest. It is a place few have ever seen, and even fewer have returned from. But if it exists, it could be the key to strengthening our fight against the shadows. Kofi and the Guardians were intrigued and eager to retrieve the Heart of Light. They knew that such an artifact could turn the tide in their favor. They prepared for their journey, gathering supplies and ensuring that the village was secure before setting off. The Whispering Forest was known for its dense foliage and eerie atmosphere. The trees seemed to whisper secrets, and the air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay. As they entered the forest, the light from their lanterns and amulets seemed to flicker and waver, making the shadows dance more ominously. Kofi led the way, guided by the ancient book's directions. They encountered numerous challenges along the path: twisting trails, treacherous cliffs, and elusive creatures that seemed to test their resolve. But with each obstacle, their determination only grew stronger. One evening, as they made camp in a clearing, Nana shared more stories about the Heart of Light. She spoke of how it was created by an ancient civilization dedicated to protecting the balance of light and darkness. The artifact was said to be hidden away in a temple built high in the trees, shielded by powerful enchantments. As they approached the location described in the book, the forest became even more mysterious. The trees grew taller and denser, and the air seemed to hum with an ancient energy. They finally arrived at a massive tree with a door carved into its trunk, just as the book had described. With a deep breath, Kofi pushed open the door. The interior of the tree was a vast, hollow space filled with glowing crystals and ancient symbols. At the center of the room was a pedestal, upon which rested the Heart of Light, an orb of radiant, pure energy. Kofi approached the pedestal, feeling the powerful energy emanating from the heart. As he reached out to take it, the room was suddenly filled with a blinding light. Shadows seemed to swirl around them, coalescing into a formidable figure, an ancient guardian of the heart, awakened by their presence. The guardian was a towering figure, shrouded in darkness but with eyes that burned with a fierce light. It spoke in a voice that resonated through the chamber. To take the Heart of Light, you must prove your worth. Show me that your heart is true and your purpose is noble. Kofi stepped forward, his heart pounding. He knew that this was a test of their resolve and their commitment to protecting the light. With a steady voice, he spoke. We seek the Heart of Light to protect our world from the shadows. We are dedicated to the cause of light and will do whatever it takes to keep the darkness at bay. The Guardian studied Kofi for a moment, then nodded. Your words are true, and your heart is pure. You may take the Heart of Light, but remember, its power comes with great responsibility. Use it wisely. Kofi carefully lifted the Heart of Light from the pedestal. The orb's energy surged through him, filling him with a sense of clarity and strength. The shadows that had been swirling around them began to retreat, as if repelled by the heart's power. With the artifact in their possession, Kofi and the Guardians made their way back to the village. The journey was arduous, but the knowledge that they carried such a powerful tool gave them renewed strength. Upon their return, the villagers welcomed them with great celebration. The Heart of Light was placed in a secure location within the village, and its presence brought a new sense of hope and confidence to everyone. Kofi, now more determined than ever, continued his training and worked closely with the Guardians to prepare for the inevitable return of the shadows. They knew that the darkness would not give up easily, but with the Heart of Light, they had a powerful ally in their fight. As Kofi looked out over the village, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The journey had been long and filled with challenges, but they had grown stronger together. The Heart of Light was a symbol of their commitment and a beacon of hope for the future. And so, with renewed determination, Kofi and the Guardians stood ready to face whatever lay ahead. The shadows would return, but they were prepared to meet the darkness with the strength of their light. The battle was far from over, but with the Heart of Light and their unwavering resolve, they were ready to protect their world from the encroaching darkness. As the weeks went by, the village became a beacon of hope and strength under the protection of Kofi and the Guardians. The Heart of Light was securely housed in a central location, its radiant glow serving as a constant reminder of their resolve and the power they wielded against the shadows. One evening, while the village was celebrating a festival of light to honor their recent victories, a mysterious figure arrived at the village gates. The figure was cloaked in a dark robe, and their face was hidden beneath a hood. The villagers, sensing an aura of unease, looked to Kofi and Amari for guidance. Kofi approached the figure cautiously. "Welcome to our village. How may we assist you?" he asked. The figure slowly lowered their hood, revealing a young woman with intense, piercing eyes. Her name was Zara, and she introduced herself as a wanderer with knowledge of an ancient prophecy. The prophecy spoke of a great convergence of light and darkness, a time when the balance between them would be tested to its limits. "I have come because I believe the prophecy is unfolding," Zara explained. "The shadows are not only growing stronger, but are also searching for a way to corrupt the Heart of Light. We must act quickly to prevent this from happening." Kofi and the Guardians listened intently. Zara shared that the prophecy mentioned a hidden location where the shadows could potentially breach the Heart's protection. This location was said to be a forgotten fortress hidden deep in the mountains, where the veil between light and darkness was particularly thin. Determined to safeguard the Heart and their world, Kofi, Amari, and Zara prepared for a new expedition. They set out with a small group of trusted guardians, traveling towards the mountain fortress that Zara had described. The journey was arduous. The mountains were treacherous, with steep cliffs and narrow paths. As they ascended, the weather grew harsher, and the temperature dropped significantly. The wind howled through the peaks, and the snow began to fall heavily. Despite the harsh conditions, Kofi and the team pressed on. They were guided by Zara's knowledge and the faint indications of danger that seemed to grow stronger with each step. They knew they were approaching the fortress when they began to feel an oppressive energy in the air. At last, they arrived at the entrance to the hidden fortress, a massive stone archway covered in ancient runes. The runes glowed faintly, and the shadows around the archway seemed to writhe and pulse with a dark energy. Kofi and the Guardians prepared themselves for what lay ahead. They entered the fortress, and the atmosphere inside was cold and heavy. The walls were lined with ancient symbols and traps designed to deter intruders. Zara led the way, carefully deciphering the runes and guiding them through the maze-like corridors. After navigating through numerous traps and challenges, they reached a large chamber at the heart of the fortress. In the center of the chamber was an altar with a dark, swirling vortex hovering above it. The vortex was surrounded by shadowy figures that seemed to be feeding the darkness with their energy. Kofi and the Guardians readied themselves for battle. The shadows, sensing their presence, surged forward with a menacing force. The Heart of Light, which they had carried with them, began to pulse with a powerful energy, pushing back against the darkness. As the battle ensued, Zara revealed her true power. She wielded a staff that emanated a brilliant light, which cut through the shadows and provided support to the Guardians. Kofi, with the Heart of Light, directed powerful beams of energy at the vortex, attempting to close it and halt the corruption. The shadows fought back fiercely, and the chamber was filled with chaotic energy. The vortex roared and twisted, its dark tendrils reaching out and attempting to engulf everything in its path. The battle was intense, with each Guardian using their unique abilities to fend off the shadows and protect their allies. Kofi and Zara worked together, combining their powers to focus on the vortex. Kofi's light and Zara's staff created a powerful synergy, pushing the shadows back and stabilizing the chamber. The vortex began to shrink under their combined efforts, but the shadows continued to fight with relentless fury. Amari and the other Guardians held their ground, defending against the encroaching darkness and supporting Kofi and Zara. The struggle seemed endless, but they persevered, driven by their determination to protect the Heart of Light and their world. As the battle reached its climax, Kofi felt a surge of energy from within the Heart of Light. He focused all his power into a final, overwhelming burst of light. The beam struck the vortex with incredible force, causing it to collapse in on itself. The shadows were driven back, and the chamber was filled with a blinding brilliance. The vortex was closed, and the dark figures dissipated into the air. The fortress fell silent, the oppressive energy replaced by a calm, soothing light. Kofi, Zara, and the Guardians stood victorious, though exhausted from the intense battle. Zara, breathing heavily, turned to Kofi. "We have succeeded, but the prophecy is not yet fulfilled. There are more trials ahead, and the balance between light and darkness will continue to be tested." Kofi nodded, understanding the weight of Zara's words. "We will be ready for whatever comes next. We have the heart of light and the strength of our unity to guide us." With the immediate threat dealt with, Kofi and the team made their way back to the village. The journey down the mountains was arduous, but their spirits were lifted by their victory. They had safeguarded the heart of light and prevented the shadows from corrupting it, but they knew that their fight was far from over. Upon their return, the village greeted them with gratitude and relief. The heart of light was secured once again, and the villagers celebrated the heroes who had protected them. Kofi, Amari, Zara, and the Guardians continued their preparations. They knew that the shadows would not rest, and the balance between light and darkness would continue to be tested. But with the heart of light and their unwavering resolve, they were prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The journey was far from over, and the battles would continue. But Kofi and his allies stood ready to protect their world, guided by the light and their indomitable spirit. The fight against the darkness would go on, but they would face it together, with hope and strength shining brightly in their hearts. The village, now more secure with the heart of light, resumed its daily life with a renewed sense of peace. However, Kofi and the Guardians were far from complacent. They knew that the shadows were not defeated but had merely retreated, waiting for another opportunity to strike. The village, once again, became a center of preparation and vigilance. One morning, as the village was bustling with activity, a sudden unnatural chill filled the air. The temperature dropped abruptly, and the sky darkened with ominous clouds. The villagers looked around in alarm as the first signs of a new shadowy threat began to appear. Kofi and the Guardians quickly gathered to assess the situation. Zara, sensing the magnitude of the new threat, proposed they seek guidance from an ancient oracle known to reside in a hidden cave near the village. The oracle was rumored to have profound knowledge about the cycles of darkness and light. Without delay, Kofi, Zara, and a few of the Guardians set out to find the oracle. They trekked through dense forests and rocky terrain until they reached the entrance of the hidden cave. The cave's entrance was partially obscured by thick vines and overgrown vegetation. They entered the cave, which was illuminated by a soft, ethereal glow. The walls were adorned with ancient symbols and carvings that seemed to come alive with the flickering light from their lanterns. At the end of the cave, they found a small chamber where the oracle, an old and wise figure, awaited them. The oracle, a woman with eyes that seemed to see through time itself, greeted them calmly. "I have been expecting you," she said. "The shadows are growing bolder, and their purpose is becoming clearer. You seek answers about the darkness that threatens your world." Kofi and Zara explained the recent events, including the battle at the mountain fortress and the current disturbances. The oracle listened intently, nodding as she absorbed the details. "The shadows are indeed becoming more aggressive," the oracle finally spoke. "Their new strategy is to sow discord among the people, to weaken their spirit and make the heart of light more vulnerable. To counter this, you must embark on a quest to find 3 sacred artifacts, each representing a core element of balance: courage, wisdom, and compassion." The oracle provided them with clues about the locations of these artifacts. The first was said to be hidden in the depths of the sunken caverns, a treacherous underground labyrinth. The second was believed to be located in the Echoing Peaks, a mountain range known for its mysterious echoes and shifting paths. The third was rumored to be in the Whispering Marshes, a place of shifting mists and hidden dangers. Determined to protect their village and the Heart of Light, Kofi, Zara, and the Guardians set out on their new quest. They decided to tackle each location in the order provided by the oracle. Their journey to the sunken caverns began with a perilous descent into the underground labyrinth. The caverns were dark and labyrinthine, filled with echoing sounds and treacherous paths. The air was damp and filled with the stench of decay. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. They encountered various challenges: raging underground rivers, shifting tunnels, and aggressive subterranean creatures. Each challenge tested their courage and teamwork. But with each obstacle, their resolve grew stronger. After what felt like an eternity, they finally reached the heart of the caverns, where they discovered a glowing crystal encased in a protective barrier. The crystal was the first sacred artifact, symbolizing courage. As they retrieved it, the cavern trembled, and the way out became more perilous. But they managed to escape, emerging victorious with the first artifact in hand. Next, they journeyed to the Echoing Peaks, a region known for its challenging terrain and eerie echoes. The peaks were covered in snow, and the air was thin and cold. The echoes of their footsteps and voices seemed to play tricks on their minds, making navigation difficult. As they climbed higher, they faced harsh weather conditions and treacherous cliffs. They also encountered mirages and illusions, which made it challenging to discern reality from deception. But Kofi and his team pressed on, guided by their determination and the clues from the oracle. At the summit, they found a hidden cave with ancient inscriptions. Inside the cave, they discovered a staff imbued with a shimmering light, the second sacred artifact, representing wisdom. The staff was guarded by a powerful elemental spirit that tested their wisdom and resolve. They passed the test, and the spirit granted them the staff. Finally, they journeyed to the Whispering Marshes. The marshes were shrouded in thick mists, and the ground was treacherous. They had to navigate through the shifting landscape, which seemed to change with every step they took. The whispers in the mists created an eerie atmosphere, and it was easy to become disoriented. They followed the clues provided by the oracle and eventually discovered an ancient, submerged temple. Within the temple, they found the third sacred artifact, a heart-shaped pendant glowing with a gentle light. This artifact symbolized compassion. It was protected by a series of emotional trials that tested their empathy and kindness. They successfully completed the trials and retrieved the pendant. With all three sacred artifacts in their possession, Kofi, Zara, and the Guardians returned to the village. The artifacts were brought to the oracle, who used them to create a powerful protective spell around the Heart of Light. The spell fortified the heart's defenses and ensured its continued protection against the encroaching shadows. The village celebrated the return of Kofi and his team, and the atmosphere was filled with hope and relief. The artifacts had been secured, and the Heart of Light was now more protected than ever. However, the oracle's prophecies still loomed over them. The shadows were relentless, and the balance between light and darkness would continue to be tested. Kofi, Zara, and the Guardians knew that their journey was far from over. They remained vigilant, always prepared for the next challenge. The battles against the shadows would continue, but with the strength of the artifacts and their unwavering resolve, Kofi and his allies were ready to face whatever lay ahead. The fight for light and balance was ongoing, but they faced it with courage, wisdom, and compassion, knowing that together they could overcome any darkness that threatened their world. The village thrived under the strength and protection of the Heart of Light, and the artifacts served as symbols of hope and resilience. Yet, Kofi and the Guardians remained vigilant, knowing that the shadows were not finished with their attempts to breach the village's defenses. The artifacts had bolstered their defenses, but the threat of darkness still loomed. One evening, as Kofi and his team were discussing their next steps, a new visitor arrived. This time, it was a young man from a neighboring village, his face filled with worry. He introduced himself as Juma and explained that his village had been experiencing strange occurrences, objects moving on their own, eerie noises, and a growing sense of dread among the villagers. Juma sought Kofi's help, believing that the disturbances were linked to the shadows. Kofi and the Guardians, knowing the importance of maintaining peace in the region, agreed to investigate. They traveled to Juma's village, which lay in a lush valley surrounded by dense forests. Upon arrival, they were greeted with an unsettling atmosphere. The villagers appeared anxious and fearful, their eyes darting nervously as they spoke of the strange occurrences. Kofi and his team immediately began their investigation. They spent the first night in the village, observing the environment and speaking with the villagers. The disturbances seemed to occur mainly at night, so they set up watches and examined the village's surroundings. As darkness fell, they noticed a pattern. Many of the disturbances seemed to be centered around an old, abandoned shrine on the outskirts of the village. The shrine was covered in overgrown vines and appeared to have been neglected for years. The air around it felt colder, and a low, unsettling hum could be heard when they approached. Kofi, Zara, and the guardians carefully examined the shrine, looking for clues. Inside the shrine, they found ancient symbols and carvings that matched some of the runes they had seen in the hidden fortress. There was also a peculiar object, a dark, crystalline shard embedded in the shrine's altar. The shard seemed to pulse with a faint, malevolent energy. Zara, recognizing the shard as an artifact of shadow magic, explained that it was likely used to create disturbances and manipulate emotions. It was an artifact that had been corrupted by dark forces and had the potential to spread fear and confusion. Kofi and his team decided to remove the shard and secure it to prevent further disturbances. However, as they attempted to extract it, a powerful wave of darkness surged from the shrine. The shadows seemed to come alive, forming swirling tendrils that reached out to engulf them. The team fought back against the encroaching shadows. Kofi, wielding the Heart of Light, and Zara, using her staff, created a protective barrier that shielded them from the shadowy tendrils. The Guardians defended against the attacking shadows, working together to hold them off. The battle was intense, but Kofi's determination and the power of the artifacts helped them push back the shadows. Zara managed to channel her energy to stabilize the shrine, and with a final, concentrated effort, they removed the crystalline shard from the altar. As soon as the shard was removed, the shadows receded, and the shrine's atmosphere returned to a more neutral state. The villagers, who had gathered outside, watched in awe and relief as the disturbances ceased. As soon as the shard was removed, the shadows receded, and the shrine's atmosphere returned to a more neutral state. The villagers, who had gathered outside, watched in awe and relief as the disturbances ceased. With the shard secured and the shrine restored, Kofi and his team returned to the village. The villagers expressed their gratitude and relief, and Juma thanked them for their help. The village began to recover from the disturbances, and the atmosphere of fear was replaced by a renewed sense of hope. Kofi, Zara, and the Guardians returned to their village, their resolve strengthened by their recent victory. They knew that the shadows were constantly seeking new ways to disrupt the balance, but they were prepared to face whatever challenges came their way. As the days passed, Kofi and his team continued their vigilance. They worked on strengthening their defenses and maintaining the protective spells around the Heart of Light. They also kept an eye out for any signs of new shadow activity, knowing that their vigilance was crucial in maintaining the balance between light and darkness. One day, while they were training and preparing for future challenges, they received word of a new development. A powerful shadow entity was reported to be gathering followers and preparing for a major assault. This entity was rumored to be one of the ancient leaders of the shadows, someone with the ability to command and manipulate vast forces of darkness. Kofi, Zara, and the Guardians knew that this new threat would be a formidable challenge. They began preparing for the upcoming battle, strategizing and honing their skills. The village, under their protection, continued to flourish, but the anticipation of the looming threat added an air of urgency to their preparations. As they trained and planned, Kofi felt a sense of anticipation and resolve. The shadows would not give up easily, but with the Heart of Light, the sacred artifacts, and their unwavering unity, they were ready to face the new challenges ahead. The battle against the darkness was far from over, but Kofi and his allies remained steadfast. They understood that their fight was not just about protecting their village, but also about safeguarding the balance between light and darkness for the entire world. With courage, wisdom, and compassion, They were prepared to face whatever trials awaited them and to continue their quest to keep the shadows at bay. The next chapter of their journey was about to begin, and they were ready to confront the darkness with the strength of their light and the power of their unity. The atmosphere in the village grew tense as news of the powerful shadow entity spread. Kofi and his team knew that they had to act swiftly to confront this new threat. They gathered the villagers and informed them of the situation, urging everyone to remain vigilant and prepared for possible disruptions. The Guardians, along with Kofi and Zara, convened in a strategic meeting to plan their approach. They discussed what they knew about the shadow entity and its potential strengths and weaknesses. Zara shared her knowledge of ancient texts that described shadow entities of great power and the methods used to counter them. The shadow entity, according to the texts, was a master of deception and manipulation, capable of sowing discord and creating illusions that could drive people to despair. The key to defeating such an entity was to stay united, maintain clarity of purpose, and rely on the combined power of the Heart of Light and the sacred artifacts. To prepare for the impending battle, Kofi and his team began a series of rigorous training exercises. They focused on honing their skills in both combat and strategy, ensuring that they were ready to face any challenges the shadow entity might throw their way. They also worked on strengthening the protective spells around the Heart of Light and reinforcing the village's defenses. The villagers, inspired by Kofi and his team's determination, began to contribute in their own ways. They created defensive barriers, organized watch shifts, and prepared supplies to support the Guardians during the battle. The sense of unity and purpose in the village was palpable, and everyone was committed to protecting their home. As the days passed, the tension grew. The shadow entity's influence began to make itself known through small, unsettling occurrences. Villagers reported seeing fleeting, shadowy figures in the corners of their vision and hearing whispers in the dark. These disturbances were not as severe as the earlier ones, but they were enough to cause concern and reinforce the need for vigilance. Kofi and his team continued their preparations, and on the eve of the anticipated assault, they gathered in the village square for a final briefing. The air was thick with anticipation as they reviewed their plan and assigned roles for the upcoming battle. Each Guardian knew their responsibilities and was ready to put their training into action. As night fell, the village was eerily quiet. The usual sounds of nocturnal creatures were absent, and the sky was covered in dark, swirling clouds. The sense of foreboding was palpable, and Kofi and his team took their positions, ready for whatever was to come. Suddenly, the silence was shattered by a chilling, otherworldly howl. Shadows began to coalesce around the village, forming dark, menacing shapes that seemed to pulse with malevolent energy. The shadow entity had arrived, and its presence was both intimidating and unsettling. Kofi, Zara, and the Guardians sprang into action. The Heart of Light was held high, its brilliance cutting through the encroaching darkness. The sacred artifacts were wielded with precision, their combined power creating a barrier of light that repelled the shadows. The shadow entity, a towering figure shrouded in darkness, emerged from the swirling mass of shadows. Its eyes glowed with an eerie red light, and it exuded an aura of profound malevolence. It spoke in a voice that seemed to echo from the depths of despair, taunting Kofi and his team. "You think you can stop me?" The shadow entity's voice boomed. "I am the darkness that resides in every heart. I am the despair that consumes hope. Your light will falter, and your unity will crumble." Kofi and his team remained resolute. They knew that the shadow entity's power was amplified by fear and doubt. Their goal was not only to defeat the entity, but also to prevent it from spreading its influence and sowing discord among the villagers. The battle commenced with a fierce clash of light and darkness. The shadow entity summoned waves of dark energy, which surged toward the village and its defenders. Kofi and the Guardians used the Heart of Light and the sacred artifacts to counter the attacks, creating powerful beams of light that pushed back the shadows. Zara focused on using her staff to create protective barriers and dispel illusions. She channeled her energy to shield the villagers from the entity's attempts to create chaos and confusion. Her staff emitted a steady, soothing glow that helped to maintain clarity and focus among the defenders. the shadow entity unleashed a series of deceptive illusions, trying to disorient and demoralize the defenders. It created false images of villagers in distress and fabricated scenarios of imminent defeat. Kofi and his team had to rely on their training and inner strength to see through the illusions and remain focused on their goal. As the battle raged on, Kofi and Zara coordinated their efforts to strike at the shadow entity directly. They combined their powers, focusing their energy on the entity's core. The Heart of Light and the staff created a brilliant, concentrated beam of light that pierced through the darkness. The shadow entity howled in rage and pain as the light struck its core. The dark energy surrounding it began to wane, and its form became less solid and more insubstantial. The entity fought back with renewed fury, but Kofi and his team pressed on, determined to finish the battle. With a final powerful surge of energy, Kofi and Zara unleashed a combined attack that shattered the shadow entity's core. The dark figure convulsed and disintegrated, its remnants dissipating into the air. The shadows that had been attacking the village were driven away, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. The village erupted in cheers of relief and victory. The battle had been won, and the threat of the shadow entity had been neutralized. Kofi, Zara, and the Guardians were exhausted but triumphant. They had faced one of their greatest challenges and emerged victorious. As dawn broke, the village returned to its peaceful state. The skies cleared, and the sun's rays bathed the village in warm light. The villagers celebrated their heroes and expressed their gratitude for the protection and bravery shown by Kofi and his team. Kofi and Zara knew that the shadows would always seek new ways to disrupt the balance between light and darkness. But they also knew that their unity, courage, and the strength of the Heart of Light and the sacred artifacts would continue to serve as a beacon of hope and resilience. The fight against the darkness was an ongoing battle, but with each victory, they grew stronger and more determined. Kofi and his allies remained vigilant, ready to face whatever new challenges arose. Their commitment to protecting their world and maintaining the balance between light and darkness was unwavering. And so, their journey continued. The battles would come, the threats would change, but the strength of their light and the unity of their purpose would always guide them. With hope in their hearts and determination in their souls, Kofi and his team were prepared to confront whatever lay ahead and to safeguard the light against the encroaching shadows. With the shadow entity defeated and the village restored to peace, Kofi and his team took some time to recover and reflect. The victory had been hard-won, and the aftermath provided a moment of respite. Yet, they knew that the shadows were always lurking, and vigilance was essential to maintaining their hard-earned peace. One day, as Kofi was inspecting the village's defenses, a new, unexpected visitor arrived. It was an old woman, clad in a robe adorned with intricate patterns. Her presence was calm and regal, and she introduced herself as an emissary from a distant land. She explained that she had come seeking Kofi's help for a matter of great importance. The emissary told Kofi that her land had recently discovered an ancient prophecy that spoke of a powerful artifact known as the Eclipse Stone. According to the prophecy, this artifact held the power to influence both light and darkness, and it was crucial to maintaining the balance between the two forces. The artifact had been lost for centuries, and recent disturbances indicated that it might be in danger of falling into the wrong hands. Kofi, understanding the gravity of the situation, agreed to help. He assembled Zara and the Guardians, and they prepared for a journey to the emissary's land. The emissary provided them with a map and a set of clues about the artifact's possible location. The journey would take them through unknown territories and involve overcoming various challenges. Their journey began at dawn. They traversed dense forests, crossed vast plains, and navigated treacherous mountain paths. Along the way, they encountered diverse cultures and landscapes, each presenting its own set of obstacles and opportunities. One of their first major challenges was crossing the River of Echoes, a wide and fast-flowing river known for its unpredictable currents and eerie echoes. The river was rumored to be guarded by a mystical creature that could control the flow of water and create illusions. Kofi and his team needed to use their wits and skills to safely cross the river. Zara, using her staff, created a protective barrier against the illusions and guided the team across. They worked together to build a raft and navigate the treacherous waters. The river's guardian, a majestic water serpent, tested their resolve but ultimately allowed them to pass after they demonstrated their respect and determination. After successfully crossing the river, they reached the entrance to a vast desert known for its shifting sands and extreme temperatures. The desert held its own challenges, including intense heat during the day and freezing cold at night. The team had to carefully ration their supplies and find ways to stay hydrated. In the heart of the desert, they discovered an ancient ruin buried beneath the sands. The ruin was marked by mysterious symbols and contained clues about the eclipse stone's location. The symbols spoke of a hidden chamber within the desert's central oasis. Following the clues, they reached the oasis, a lush and verdant area surrounded by palm trees and clear water. The oasis was a welcome respite from the harsh desert environment. They searched for the hidden chamber and discovered an entrance concealed by thick vines and rocks. Inside the chamber, they encountered a series of puzzles and traps designed to test their knowledge and perseverance. The puzzles were based on ancient wisdom and required them to solve riddles and align symbols to reveal the path forward. Working together, Kofi and his team managed to navigate the challenges and reach the artifact. The eclipse stone was housed in a grand, ornate pedestal at the chamber's center. The artifact was a large, spherical stone with a dark core surrounded by a shimmering halo of light. Its power was palpable, and the air around it seemed to hum with energy. As they approached the eclipse stone, the chamber began to tremble. An ancient guardian, a powerful being of light and shadow, appeared to protect the artifact. The guardian challenged Kofi and his team to prove their worthiness by facing trials that tested their inner strength and unity. Kofi and his team faced the trials with bravery and determination. They were tested on their courage, wisdom, and compassion, traits that were crucial to wielding the eclipse stone's power responsibly. Each guardian played a vital role in overcoming the trials, and their combined efforts demonstrated their true worth. Having passed the trials, they were granted access to the eclipse stone. The guardian bestowed their blessing and shared knowledge about the artifact's use. The eclipse stone had the power to harmonize light and darkness, creating a balance that could be crucial in times of great conflict. With the eclipse stone secured, Kofi and his team prepared to return to their village. The emissary expressed her gratitude and explained that the artifact's presence would help maintain harmony in her land and beyond. The journey back was filled with a sense of accomplishment and anticipation. Kofi and his team had successfully retrieved the eclipse stone and had grown stronger through their trials. Their experiences had deepened their understanding of the balance between light and darkness and their role in protecting it. Upon their return, the village welcomed them with celebration and relief. The eclipse stone was placed in a secure location, and its power was carefully monitored to ensure it was used wisely. The village continued to thrive, and the guardians remained vigilant, ready to face any new threats that might arise. Kofi, Zara, and the team understood that their journey was far from over. The shadows would always seek to disrupt the balance, but with their unwavering unity, strength, and the powerful artifacts they had secured, they were prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Their commitment to protecting their world and maintaining harmony between light and darkness was steadfast. The battles they faced were part of a larger journey, and they knew that their role in safeguarding the balance was both a privilege and a responsibility. As they looked to the future, Kofi and his allies were ready to confront new trials and continue their quest to protect the light and keep the darkness at bay. Their journey was a testament to their courage, wisdom, and unity, and they remained resolute in their mission to uphold the balance and bring hope to their world. The village had returned to its peaceful rhythm, and the presence of the eclipse stone was a reassuring symbol of balance and harmony. Kofi, Zara, and the Guardians took time to celebrate their success and reflect on their journey. However, they remained ever conscious that maintaining peace required constant vigilance and readiness. One day, as they were tending to their duties, they received another urgent message. This time, it was from a distant region known for its dense and mysterious jungles. The message spoke of an unusual disturbance. A powerful force was disrupting the natural order of the jungle, causing plants to wither and animals to behave erratically. Kofi and his team, always ready to assist those in need, decided to investigate the situation. They prepared for the journey by gathering supplies and reviewing their knowledge of the jungle's flora and fauna. The dense jungle presented its own set of challenges, and understanding its complexities was crucial. Upon arrival, they were struck by the stark contrast between the vibrant beauty of the jungle and the signs of its distress. Trees stood leafless, and the usual symphony of animal calls was replaced by an eerie silence. The villagers, who lived in harmony with the jungle, were clearly worried and pleaded for help. Kofi and his team began their investigation by exploring the affected areas. They noticed that the disturbances seemed to be concentrated around a central, ancient tree known as the Heart Tree. The Heart Tree was considered sacred and was believed to be the source of the jungle's life force. Approaching the Heart Tree, they were struck by its condition. The once majestic tree appeared withered and darkened, its energy clearly diminished. Zara examined the tree and detected traces of dark magic that had been cast upon it. It was clear that the disturbances were caused by a powerful, malevolent force aiming to corrupt the jungle's heart. To counter the dark magic, Kofi and Zara decided to seek out the source of the corruption. They followed a trail of dark energy that led them deeper into the jungle, navigating through dense undergrowth and treacherous terrain. The air grew heavier with each step, and the atmosphere was charged with an ominous energy. Their search brought them to an old, hidden temple buried within the jungle. The temple was covered in vines and appeared to have been abandoned for centuries. The entrance was guarded by complex runes and symbols that seemed to radiate with dark energy. Inside the temple, they found clues that revealed the presence of a dark sorcerer who had once sought to control the jungle's power. The sorcerer's goal had been to harness the Heart Tree's life force to increase his own power. Although the sorcerer had been long gone, his dark magic had left a lingering influence on the temple and the jungle. Kofi and his team had to navigate through a series of traps and obstacles designed to protect the sorcerer's hidden lair. They used their skills and knowledge to bypass the traps and uncover the source of the dark magic, a dark crystal embedded in the temple's central chamber. The dark crystal was emitting a constant malevolent aura that was affecting the Heart Tree and the surrounding jungle. Zara identified the crystal as an artifact of dark magic that had been corrupted and was amplifying the effects of the sorcerer's enchantments. To neutralize the dark crystal, Kofi and Zara devised a plan. They would need to create a counterspell using the power of the Eclipse Stone and the Heart of Light. The counterspell would require them to combine their energies and focus on dispelling the dark magic. As they prepared to perform the counterspell, they were confronted by manifestations of the dark sorcerer's magic, phantoms and illusions that sought to thwart their efforts. The phantoms attacked with dark, shadowy energy, and the illusions tried to confuse and disorient them. Kofi and his team fought against the phantoms and resisted the illusions, maintaining their focus on the task at hand. With the Heart of Light and the Eclipse Stone, they channeled a powerful beam of light toward the dark crystal. The combined energy of the artifacts created a radiant, purifying force that began to dissolve the dark magic. The dark crystal shattered, and the dark energy dissipated, lifting the oppressive atmosphere from the temple and the jungle. The Heart Tree, now free from the dark magic, began to recover. Its leaves regained their vibrant green color, and the jungle's natural harmony was slowly restored. With the jungle's balance re-established, the villagers expressed their profound gratitude. They celebrated the heroes who had come to their aid and praised Kofi and his team for their bravery and determination. The jungle, once again, was a thriving and harmonious environment. As they prepared to return to their village, Kofi and his team felt a sense of accomplishment and relief. They had successfully countered the dark magic and restored the jungle's vitality. Yet, they knew that their work was never truly finished. New threats and challenges would always arise, and they needed to be prepared for whatever lay ahead. Back in their own village, Kofi and the Guardians continued their vigilance and maintained their focus on protecting the balance between light and darkness. They continued to train and strengthen their defenses, knowing that their journey was an ongoing one. One day, a new piece of information arrived, an ancient prophecy that spoke of a coming era of great change. The prophecy hinted at a powerful force that could either restore harmony or plunge the world into chaos. Kofi and his team understood that this prophecy was a call to action, and they prepared themselves for the challenges and adventures that the future held. Their journey had taught them many lessons about courage, unity, and the delicate balance of light and darkness. With each victory, they grew stronger and more resolute in their mission. The path ahead was uncertain, but they were ready to face whatever trials awaited them. As the sun set over the village, Kofi and his allies looked forward with hope and determination. They knew that their quest to protect the light and maintain harmony was a noble and vital endeavor. With their hearts full of courage and their spirits unwavering, they were prepared to confront the challenges of the future and continue their journey of safeguarding the balance between light and darkness. As the days turned into weeks, the village settled into a renewed sense of calm, but the new prophecy weighed heavily on Kofi and his team. They gathered frequently to discuss their plans and prepare for the unknown challenges that lay ahead. Their commitment to protecting their world remained unwavering, and they continued to strengthen their skills and knowledge. One morning, as they were reviewing ancient texts related to the prophecy, a series of strange events began to unfold. Villagers reported unusual occurrences: strange lights in the sky, mysterious symbols appearing on the ground, and sudden, unseasonable weather changes. The village's peace was once again disrupted, and it became clear that the prophecy was not merely a distant possibility but a looming reality. Kofi and his team decided to investigate these disturbances. They started by examining the symbols that had appeared. The symbols were unfamiliar but seemed to be part of an ancient script. Zara, with her deep knowledge of magical texts, began deciphering the symbols to uncover their meaning. The symbols, when translated, revealed a warning about an impending convergence of powerful energies, both light and dark. This convergence was said to bring about a great upheaval, and the only way to prevent disaster was to find and secure 3 legendary artifacts that were believed to hold the key to stabilizing the energies. The first artifact was known as the Celestial Mirror, an object said to reflect the true nature of any being and reveal hidden truths. The second was the Eternal Flame, a source of unending light that could counteract darkness. The third was the Glimmering Amulet, an ancient talisman that was said to have the power to bind and balance conflicting forces. Determined to prevent the impending upheaval, Kofi and his team set out on a quest to locate these artifacts. They knew that the journey would be perilous and that they would face new and unforeseen challenges. The search for the Celestial Mirror would take them to the highest peaks of a mountain range, where legend spoke of an ancient temple hidden within the clouds. Their journey began with a difficult ascent through the rugged terrain of the mountain range. The air grew thinner and the weather harsher as they climbed higher. They faced fierce winds, biting cold, and treacherous cliffs. Despite the harsh conditions, their resolve remained strong. At the mountain's peak, they found the entrance to the ancient temple. The temple was adorned with celestial motifs and intricate carvings. Inside, they encountered complex puzzles and trials that tested their understanding of truth and perception. Each challenge revealed deeper layers of the artifact's nature and required them to confront their own fears and doubts. After overcoming the trials, they found the Celestial Mirror. It was a large, ornate mirror set in a golden frame. The mirror's surface shimmered with a silver light, and it was clear that it held great power. The mirror revealed not only physical reflections but also the inner essence of those who gazed into it. With the Celestial Mirror secured, they turned their attention to finding the Eternal Flame. The artifact was said to be hidden in a volcanic region, deep within the heart of an active volcano. The journey to the volcano was fraught with danger. Lava flows, toxic gases, and intense heat tested their endurance and skill. Upon reaching the volcano's summit, they discovered an ancient forge where the Eternal Flame was said to be kept. The forge was guarded by elemental spirits of fire that tested their bravery and purity of heart. By demonstrating their dedication to protecting the balance of light and darkness, they gained the spirits' trust and were allowed to claim the Eternal Flame. The final artifact, the Glimmering Amulet, was believed to be hidden within an underwater cave in a vast and mysterious ocean. The cave was protected by magical barriers and sea creatures that posed additional challenges. Kofi and his team had to navigate the depths of the ocean and overcome underwater obstacles to reach the amulet. Inside the cave, they found the glimmering amulet, glowing with a soft, ethereal light. The amulet was encased in a protective barrier that required them to solve a series of riddles related to the balance of forces. Once they successfully solved the riddles, the barrier dissolved, allowing them to retrieve the amulet. With all three artifacts in their possession, Kofi and his team returned to their village. They realized that the convergence of energies was drawing near, and they had to act quickly to stabilize the forces and prevent disaster. The artifacts were placed in a central location within the village, where their combined powers could be harnessed. Kofi and his team prepared a ritual to balance the energies and neutralize the impending upheaval. The ritual required the combined energy of the celestial mirror, the eternal flame, and the glimmering amulet, along with the unity and strength of the entire village. As they performed the ritual, the artifact's powers were activated, creating a harmonious blend of light and darkness. The energies converged and stabilized, dispelling the disturbances and restoring balance to the world. The village and surrounding regions experienced a renewed sense of peace and harmony. The successful completion of the ritual marked a new chapter in Kofi and his team's journey. They had faced significant challenges, retrieved powerful artifacts, and safeguarded their world from potential chaos. Their bond grew stronger, and their commitment to protecting the balance between light and darkness was reinforced. As the village celebrated their victory, Kofi and his team remained vigilant, knowing that new challenges would always arise. They understood that their quest was ongoing and that their role in maintaining harmony was both a responsibility and a privilege. With hope and determination, they prepared for whatever lay ahead. Their journey was far from over, and they were ready to face new adventures, confront new threats, and continue their mission to protect the light and balance the darkness. The future held countless possibilities, and Kofi and his allies were prepared to embrace them with courage and resilience. As the village basked in its renewed tranquility, Kofi and his team took some well-deserved rest. Yet, their peace was short-lived. Strange occurrences began anew, hinting at a deeper unrest. Whispers among villagers spoke of omens and unsettling dreams, suggesting that the balance they had fought so hard to restore might still be fragile. One night, Kofi was visited by a dream. In it, a mysterious figure draped in shadows spoke of a veil of darkness that was slowly encroaching upon the world. The figure warned that the balance was threatened by an ancient curse that had been unleashed with the retrieval of the artifacts. The curse was said to be a countermeasure by dark forces that sought to undo the harmony they had worked to achieve. The following morning, Kofi shared the dream with Zara and the Guardians. They agreed that the dream might be a warning and decided to investigate further. They consulted old scrolls and texts, seeking information about the Veil of Darkness and the curse it was said to bring. Their research revealed that the Veil of Darkness was an ancient malevolent force that could shroud the world in perpetual night, disrupting the balance between light and darkness. To counteract the curse, they needed to locate and neutralize the source of the veil. The text suggested that the source of the veil might be hidden in an ancient and forgotten realm known as the Shadow Realm. This realm was a place of dark magic and illusions, where the Veil of Darkness was said to originate. To enter the Shadow Realm, they would need to find a hidden portal located in a remote, forgotten part of their world. Kofi and his team embarked on a new quest to find the portal. Their journey led them through untamed landscapes and ancient ruins, each area marked by its own set of challenges and mysteries. They faced treacherous terrain, deceptive illusions, and trials that tested their courage and wisdom. As they traveled, they encountered individuals who had been affected by the encroaching veil. Villages were experiencing strange phenomena, daylight disappearing unexpectedly, people falling into unexplainable slumbers, and animals behaving erratically. These disturbances only reinforced the urgency of their mission. Eventually, they reached the location of the hidden portal. It was concealed within a vast labyrinth of caves, guarded by powerful magical wards. The labyrinth was filled with traps and illusions designed to deter intruders. Zara's knowledge of magic and Kofi's leadership were crucial in navigating the labyrinth and finding the portal. The portal itself was an ancient archway inscribed with runes that seemed to pulse with dark energy. Kofi and his team prepared themselves for what lay beyond, knowing that the Shadow Realm would be a place of intense darkness and challenge. Upon entering the Shadow Realm, they were enveloped in a surreal and eerie environment. The realm was a twisted reflection of their world, with shifting shadows and distorted landscapes. The air was thick with dark energy, and every step seemed to lead them deeper into confusion. In the heart of the Shadow Realm, they encountered the source of the Veil of Darkness, a massive, shadowy entity known as the Eclipse Wraith. The Wraith was a powerful being of pure darkness, capable of manipulating the shadows to create illusions and exert its will. Kofi and his team knew that defeating the Eclipse Wraith would be their greatest challenge yet. They had to confront their deepest fears and doubts, as the Wraith fed on their vulnerabilities and sought to break their resolve. Each guardian faced their own trials, battling the Wraith's illusions and dark minions. Through their combined strength and unity, they managed to weaken the Wraith. Zara used her magic to counteract the illusions, while Kofi led the team in a coordinated attack against the Wraith. The battle was fierce and draining, but their determination and teamwork were unwavering. In the final moments of the battle, Kofi and his team channeled the power of the Eclipse Stone and the other artifacts they had secured. The combined energies created a brilliant light that clashed with the darkness of the Wraith. With a final surge of power, they overcame the Eclipse Wraith and dispelled the Veil of Darkness. The Shadow Realm began to collapse as the Veil's influence was eradicated. Kofi and his team made their way back through the collapsing realm and emerged into their world, where the disturbances began to subside. The balance between light and darkness was restored once again. Returning to their village, they were greeted with relief and gratitude. The villagers celebrated their heroes, and the world seemed to regain its natural harmony. Kofi and his team, though exhausted, felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Yet, they knew that their journey was far from over. The world was vast and filled with unknown challenges. They continued to stay vigilant, prepared to face any new threats that might arise. One evening, as they gathered to discuss their future plans, they received a message from a distant land. It was a call for help from a region experiencing a new type of darkness, one that threatened not only their balance but the very essence of their world. Kofi and his team understood that their quest was an ongoing mission to protect the light and balance the darkness. With resolve and determination, they prepared for their next adventure, knowing that each challenge they faced would shape their journey and their legacy. As they looked to the horizon, Kofi and his allies were ready to embrace the future with courage and hope. Their commitment to safeguarding their world and maintaining harmony remained steadfast, and they were prepared to continue their journey, facing whatever trials lay ahead with unwavering resolve. As Kofi and his team set their sights on the new call for help, their preparations were thorough. They packed essential supplies, studied any available information about the new type of darkness, and consulted with allies from previous adventures. The urgency of the situation was clear. The threat they were about to confront was unlike anything they had encountered before. The message had come from a land far to the north, a region known for its mysterious and ancient forests. These forests were said to harbor powerful and ancient energies, and it was here that the new darkness was beginning to spread. Kofi and his team journeyed through varied terrains, each step bringing them closer to the heart of the crisis. As they arrived in the northern land, they were struck by the stark contrast between the natural beauty of the forests and the signs of the encroaching darkness. The trees, once vibrant and full of life, now stood withered and lifeless. The air was heavy with an oppressive silence, broken only by the occasional distant cry of a distressed animal. They were greeted by the local inhabitants, who described the darkness as a creeping, almost sentient fog that had begun to envelop their land. This fog, known as the Shadow Mist, was unlike anything they had faced before. It seemed to drain the life from everything it touched, and its effects were spreading rapidly. The villagers had been trying to combat the Shadow Mist with traditional methods, but their efforts had been in vain. The darkness was too powerful and seemed to resist all attempts at purification. Kofi and his team knew that they needed to find the source of the Shadow Mist to stop it effectively. They began their investigation by exploring the affected areas of the forest. Zara used her knowledge of ancient magic to analyze the shadow mist and its properties. They discovered that the mist was being generated by a dark, magical artifact hidden somewhere within the forest. This artifact, known as the Veilstone, was believed to be the source of the shadow mist. The search for the Veilstone led them deeper into the forest, where they encountered various obstacles and trials. The shadow mist created illusions and traps that tested their resolve and unity. They had to rely on their skills and trust in each other to navigate through these challenges. Eventually, they reached an ancient ruin at the center of the forest. The ruin was covered in dark vines and seemed to be the epicenter of the shadow mist's influence. Inside the ruin, they found clues indicating that the Veilstone was hidden in a concealed chamber. To access the chamber, they had to solve a series of puzzles and overcome magical barriers. Each puzzle required them to use their knowledge and intuition to unlock the path forward. As they solved each challenge, they inched closer to the Veilstone. In the final chamber, they found the Veilstone, a dark, pulsating gem embedded in an ancient pedestal. The artifact radiated a powerful, malevolent energy that seemed to feed the shadow mist. Kofi and his team realized that they needed to neutralize the Veilstone to stop the spread of the darkness. Zara used her magical expertise to perform a purification ritual. She channeled the combined energies of the artifacts they had previously secured: the celestial mirror, the eternal flame, and the glimmering amulet. The ritual required precise coordination and concentration, as the Veilstone resisted their efforts with intense waves of dark energy. As Zara performed the ritual, Kofi and the other guardians stood guard, fending off the dark creatures and forces that emerged from the Veilstone's influence. The battle was fierce, with the dark forces attacking with relentless vigor. However, Kofi and his team fought with unwavering determination, protecting Zara and ensuring that the ritual could be completed. With a final burst of light, the purification ritual succeeded. The Veilstone shattered, and the shadow mist began to dissipate. The forest, once again, started to recover. The trees regained their vitality, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted, bringing a sense of relief and hope to the villagers. The local inhabitants expressed their profound gratitude to Kofi and his team. They celebrated their heroes with a grand feast and festivities, acknowledging their bravery and dedication in saving their land from the encroaching darkness. As Kofi and his team prepared to return to their village, they reflected on their journey and the new challenges they had faced. They understood that their mission to protect the balance between light and darkness was an ongoing responsibility. Each adventure they undertook deepened their understanding and strengthened their resolve. Back in their own village, they continued their vigilance, staying alert for any new threats that might arise. The world was vast and full of mysteries, and Kofi and his allies were committed to safeguarding their realm and maintaining harmony. One day, they received another message, this time from a distant land across the sea. The message spoke of a new disturbance involving ancient spirits and forgotten powers. Kofi and his team knew that their journey was far from over, and they prepared to embark on a new quest to address the emerging threat. With a renewed sense of purpose and determination, Kofi and his allies set out once again, ready to face the unknown and protect the light. Their adventures would continue, and their legacy as guardians of balance would be carried forward with courage and hope. The future held countless possibilities, and they were prepared to embrace each new challenge with unwavering resolve. Kindly consider liking and subscribing to our channel for an extensive collection of African folktales.